Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell. You can find me on Twitter at UtterlyTC. And I should say we've got a new guest on this season for Meet the Elite and its name's Tim Walpole. I'm really excited to get his thoughts ahead, guys, of Game Week 13. We're midway through this international break. I'm sure we're all bored to tears of that. So we've got some planning thoughts to get into. We've got timestamps on the video if you do want to hop around. We have got push notifications enabled if you head over to fantasyfootballfix.com and want to follow the thoughts of our elite managers, of which Tim is very much one of them. So I do encourage you all to do that. In this week's video, we're going to be looking ahead to Game Week 13 and also talking around some captaincy options for Game Weeks 13 through 18. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel, and I should say a very, very warm welcome to Tim Walpole, his first time on the show. So, Tim, welcome along, man. How has your season been going? And also, before you tell us about that, how long have you been playing this infernal game that we call FPL?
Thanks, Tom. I've been playing it for a very long time now. I was actually playing way back fantasy football.
Goodness me.
Telegraph
I remember
game.
it well.
The Telegraph game. Yeah, with sort of like postal transfers, I think, before progressing to telephone transfers. So that was a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, FPL was back in 2002 when it first started, but there's no records that go back that far. So basically, I've been playing it forever.
Okay. Good man. And look, I mean, that's a load of experience, Tim. I mean, you can see there you've got some amazing finishes. Look at that beautiful top 500 finish, which I'm sure you're rightfully very, very proud of. How's this season been going for you, mate? We can see that there's been sort of steady upward trend on the graph we've got on the screen here, and around that sort of 400k overall rank after 12 game weeks. How's the season been, man? How are you feeling about how it's shaping up so far?
Yeah, it's going okay, mate. It's going okay. It could be better, but like the ranks, I think, are still fairly compressed. I think. I mean, there's always going to be gaps, but I think compared to previous seasons, it's quite compressed so far. So whilst I can't remember how far I am off the top 100k, for example, I think it's something like 30 odd points, which at this stage is not that much really. Would I rather be higher? Yes. But it is what it is. It's been a mixed bag, so happy overall.
And we can see you used the wild card, Tim, back in Game Week 8. We can see that's the only chip you've used so far. How's things been since then? We can see you had that lovely initial jump up there. Are you happy with how that's gone? If you had the time over, would you think that was the right time to have played it?
Yeah, I mean, it's team dependent, obviously, as always. I know there will be those who managed to save it longer and got a good boost off of 10. For me, 8 was the logical place to play it, and I think many people did do that and got quite a nice rank boost, but also team value for those who played in 8. I'm not sure I got quite as much of a benefit as that. I'm not a keen chaser of team value. But obviously it is important, and this season does seem to be quite important so far to be able to squeeze in all those players, which I haven't always been able to do this season. So I as you may have seen from my team, I haven't got I've got Alvarez and that's up front instead of anybody else, and that's not the best, I think, because I'd rather have Watkins. But so that was the constraint on my team value.
Well, I mean, the team value is looking healthy, isn't it? We can see here you've got 1.5 million in the bank, and we will take a look at the team in a moment to see how you're shaping up ahead of Game Week 13. I should just say, guys, as well, apologies that Tim's view there is slightly elongated. That's a technical fault on my end, nothing to do with Tim. So apologies that hopefully it's not too distracting, but just wanted to face into that. In terms of though, strategically, Tim, this is the first conversation we've had with you on the series. You mentioned their team value's not something you chase. I find that quite interesting. Does that mean that you're typically you'd favour sort of making transfers later on in the game week and holding out for more information? Is that strategically what you'd advise?
I would always prefer to do that. Yeah, the information is usually very valuable. However, it's sort of dependent on the season, the stage in the season, how FPL tweak their algorithm. Stuff like that. In terms of don't chase it. but sometimes you have to move as you get priced out. So it is a balance of varying factors. I do find that invariably team value tends to follow having the right players at the right time. Obviously, I know that sounds obvious, but you can easily burn through a lot of transfers trying to transfer in all the right, and then you just fall so far behind. But sometimes you have to move. That 0.1, we all know. How often do you find yourself 0.1 short?
Scarily often, man. It does feel that happens, and it's funny, right? Because I've talked to all of you guys over the course of this season, and you all at the beginning of the season and through the manager notes were saying that there was just incredible value this season and we didn't need to worry about money. I was beating that drum as well, and now like the last 3 videos,
and here we all are.
Yeah, we're all whinging.
Skint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the credit crunch and difficulty with cost of living is being felt in FPL, isn't it, as well? We're all pinching the pennies, definitely. Yeah, of course, I understand.
Well, that's when it happens when you try and squeeze in Salah, Haaland, Trippier. The list goes on.
Definitely.
So it's been a challenge, and I haven't managed to. But then you don't always have the optimal team, and there are always options available to you, which is something that I think that experience is something that is important from my point of view. Just because you might not be able to afford player X doesn't mean you can't afford someone else who may still be just as valid an option, even if you haven't thought about it.
Like it. Yeah, interesting thoughts. I guess as well, Tim, what I was saying, quite close in rank right now, 400,000 in change right now. What's the goal for the season, Tim? Has your goal for the season changed from day one of the season to now? What are you hoping to have met by the end of the season?
You're not going to like. I tend not to have a goal these days.
Interesting. Yeah.
I tend not, because it's sort of, you can place an undue pressure upon yourself.
Yeah.
Now that sounds kind of a bit disingenuous, but it's really not. Would I prefer to finish as high? Yes, it's to finish as high as possible.
Sure.
But like, if I say I have a goal, then it's like, well, that's kind of like, well, yeah. I mean, ideally, it would be the top 100k as a bare minimum.
Yeah, to win it.
Yeah. To win it. But like that I can't see happening this year.
No.
But I mean, I think am I likely to ever best my top finish?
Beautiful.
Probably not. It's getting harder and harder. I will be honest. It is getting harder and harder.
It is, and that's why we use fantasyfootballfix.com, of course.
It is indeed. Everything helps. Everything helps.
Definitely is, man. Definitely is. All right, cool. Well, we'll check back in throughout the season and see how it's progressing. Lots of chips still in play. Loads of game weeks still to come. We've got the crazy festive fixtures to come as well, which I know all FPL managers, myself included, are always the most fun part of the season, I think. Even a double game week season as well is fun. But, right around this crazy, every 3 days playing is going to be so much fun, and no international football to get in the way of things. So, cool. All right, mate. That's a nice introduction there. We've got a good idea of how you go about managing things. Let's take a look at how you're intending to shape up for game week 13 once we come back from the international break. Okay, guys, so we can see on screen right now. So Tim wildcarded, as I said, back in game week 8, and just give you a chance to have a little look through this 3-5-2 formation. Normally I'd start with the back sort of defenders and goalkeepers, Tim, but you've already sort of given an introduction to the forward quandary that you've got. So right now you've got this double Man City set up with Alvarez and Haaland. Obviously, I think Haaland we can spend some time on, but this sort of speaks from himself. They've got this blank upcoming as well. He's been great. Alvarez, still great value. Is he on the chopping block for you, Tim? What are your thoughts around, and what would you recommend to owners of Alvarez with the upcoming fixtures for Man City?
He is on the chopping block for sure. I mean, without being harsh, but I mean, he's done well and has been, a good servant for the team. I think many who have opted to have him. Some people have him as well as Watkins or as part of it, but he's done me okay. But he would be something I would be looking to move on for, maybe Darwin.
Okay, nice.
I mean, that's a definite option. Liverpool switches look okay. I mean, I would say at this stage of the season, I'm preferring to try. You just alluded to yourself with the heavy schedule. I'd prefer to have nailed on a players as possible through the bulk of the team, if I can, because you don't really want to be getting into the thick of it with players who you can't rely on. We all run. You're prepared to make a gamble earlier on in the season, trying to find those few points, and that's definitely worth chasing. But heading into this period, I would rather have those players who are as nailed on as possible and hopefully going to get you the full 90 or as close to it as possible.
Yeah,
I think it's very important. But Alvarez, yes, Alvarez is going to be a possible sacrifice. Uncertain who for yet. Like I said, mentioned Darwin, but it could be Solanke. Even speaking, I mean, honestly, I think he's not a terrible option.
Not at all.
He's very just those points just keep on, coming in a regular fashion. Not a heavy scorer.
Yeah.
Although last week he did okay.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
But
Interesting one with Solanke. So we talked a couple of options. Let's just talk some fixtures there. Just having a little look on the tracker, and you can track these fixtures difficulty-wise on Fantasy Football Fix, of course. So Bournemouth have got Sheffield United away, Aston Villa at home, and then Crystal Palace away in their next 3. Pretty kind fixtures, you'd say, right? Decent. I think Villa have struggled away, haven't they? Been fantastic at home, but struggled away.
They're very much that's the story of their season.
Yeah.
I mean, they aren't bad away from home,
no,
but they're very much at home. They're a very different prospect scoring wise and at home generally.
Yeah. So if you had a straight up choice between the two, Ollie Watkins or Solanke, would you have a particular favour? Is it that just Watkins playing in a better team?
I'd probably favour Watkins over, but like it's a question of like it depends on what other transfers I may make at this point as to what happens in that. So it's kind of a puzzle in terms of like filling in the gap. So I probably will look to move on Gordon. Probably this week was. I mean, but again, I'm not. We need the information. We're in limbo.
We are
in,
a little bit
in the break. We need the information on who may be injured or who is all sorts of who isn't going to start. I mean, as much information this week as possible. I've only got the 1 free transfer.
Yeah.
Those who've got 2 are sitting pretty. I think it's a good position to be in, as always during an international break.
It is, yeah.
Bumo's looking to come back into my team. It's a must for me.
Okay.
And for me, it'll probably be, it's my preferred transfer this week, I think.
Can you get there in the one move from Gordon, Tim, with the money that you've got in the bank, Tim? Is that sufficient?
Yeah, I think I can. Yeah, I should be able to, unless his price goes. I don't think it's possible for him to go out. So I think it's the most likely transfer, barring some kind of disaster, which is definitely possible.
You mentioned Tim. Sorry to cut across you. You mentioned him coming back into the team. I'm interested how he left. Was that on the wild card, or was there a certain? Yeah, it was on the.
It was on the wild card. Looking again, it was just it was looking to get in the maximum potential value points wise. Yeah. Looking over after the wild card, planning forward. Do I wish I'd have kept him? Yes. Yeah. But like I said, you can't have everybody.
No.
And I think it's he is nailed on. He has done so well.
He's been brilliant, hasn't he? Yeah, been fantastic.
As I I held my hand up and say it was probably a mistake overall to let him go. But you can't look back, and what you can do is try and fix that and admit that you maybe made a mistake, not double down on it, and just say right, it's coming back in.
I love that. That's good strategic advice there. I think the temptation is to beat yourself up as an FPL manager, isn't it? And think about points lost on the bench and transfers made, etc. But the only important one is the next one, right? I've heard that from other managers that have talked as well. So,
absolutely.
So in terms of that midfield 5 then, I mean, I've looked at that and I'm sort of drooling, salivating at how great a midfielder is. But you're thinking that Mbumo would be the missing cog, I guess. And actually, they've got Arsenal in their next game, and then after that, it's much more favourable. The
looks
home game
very kind
Luton,
after that.
Brighton after that. So, you think you bring him back in ahead of that Arsenal game, or would you be comfortable? Would you want to say I'll swerve that one and wait for the Luton fixture?
I think for me, right now, this could change. I'd be looking to get him in this week, I think, for preference, because there's nowhere else. The fixtures for this week don't look too kind. They don't look awful.
It's true. Yeah,
it's not. I don't expect you. You never know. Game week 11 looked reasonable. We all know how.
Why have you brought that up? That's a miserable game week to be reminding me of.
Oh, sorry.
Horrific triple captaincy.
Moving on. 13 doesn't look. It's not going to be that bad. It's really not going to be. But I think you just look at it and think, right, well, what's my, it's a bit dull. Perhaps you could argue, but honestly, it cements, the the midfield five to be a really nice
Beautiful.
midfield five. Looks up, and then you can build on that over the next few weeks going forward. Sometimes it's the obvious move, and like in recent weeks, I've made some not so obvious moves that have backfired. So, like not playing Simicast last week, stuff like that, and you know, it's easily done. But I do think that like it just brings him, and like he's more than capable of bringing home a good, you know, return. In any game, any game.
And you know, the Arsenal are a fantastic team, aren't they? And defensively have been solid as well, but not beyond the realms of possibility he returns in that fixture, particularly
if someone's going to return, I mean, you know, it's going to probably be him.
Agree.
So, you know, I mean, yes, Arsenal have been very good defensively.
Yeah, they have.
And speaking of which, that is as a future transfer, I would be looking to get in an Arsenal defender. I think the defence at the moment, for me, I don't know if it's the same for everyone else. I think it is possibly. It feels a very uncertain area, a bit threadbare for me. And there's not, you know, where do we look to bring in a player? Who do you?
Well, I mean, it's funny you should mention that. I was going to ask you about this defence. So, I mean, it's not got a lot of money back there right now. Matty Cash obviously has been great value, hasn't he? Maybe dried up pretty recently in a tough away fixture against Tottenham to return. He's
probably someone. Sorry, I'd be looking to move him on. As well.
Villa's fixtures do sour, don't they, a little bit? So, and Jermaine, so Lascelles for Newcastle as well. Great price, but there's talk of Botman being available soon as well, isn't there? I think a little bit of unknown sort of status around him as well. So, I mean, defensively, what are your thoughts on your setup at the moment? In terms of where you'd go, Tim, I guess, in terms of transfers, who are the targets that you're interested in?
So an Arsenal defender, Saliba is the most kind of like, you know, but if I can't stretch to him, then Gabriel is actually a reasonable. He'll get the 90 or he won't, I think. In most cases, I think that's probably. So I'd be quite happy if I couldn't, and I'd say the same to anybody else if I couldn't. You know, Saliba's the one probably. I would probably, you know, go with either, and that's a really good way into the Arsenal defence. I mean, obviously, with losing Cash, I mean, there is it's a question mark over game week 18. Looking forward, Villa have a game, don't they? And they have a good game, and that's another one surrounding Watkins. But like, I mean, so there is, but I'm looking to get in more nailed players, really. So
Fix likes Palace
from the Arsenal defense.
Fix likes that has been sort of recommending and endorsing the Crystal Palace double up as a defensive option or strategy. What do you think about that?
I think it's valid. I think it has been valid and continues to be valid. Have been very good value. You know, and I think that like another option might be a United defender possibly. You know, there's some value there. Again, it's sort of, there is always that personal element of choice. I haven't made. I mean, honestly, at the moment, it's. I am aware that I need to tackle that. Looking at the back, so it's for me. It's looking at where you have the problems and sort of tackling them, not one by one, but in that. Like I spoke of that puzzle. It's how can I best move that around, timing with the fixtures to try and make sure, because your team is never, other than hopefully when you may play a wild card or your free hit. But like you're gonna have some suboptimal turnouts, you know, on most weeks, and that's okay. But like obviously, I am aware that like no, I'm not overly happy with the defence I currently have. So that is an.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? You sort of mentioned as well, like we're returning to a game week where the fixtures don't look great, do they, for attacking returns or prospective clean sheets? Really, I would argue. So it might be one to keep the sort of powder dry and reassess after the international break is over.
I mean, if you've got, sorry to interrupt, mate. I mean, if you've got the 2 free hits, you're in a great. I think you're sitting pretty right now, and I'd probably, unless you need to, I'd probably spend the 1 and then roll it for the other one.
Okay, good advice.
Have 2 for the next week, I think, and then look to sort of like, you know, invest there. It's always, I wouldn't. I mean, obviously, again, what's my immediate return versus the long term planning in terms of like so. I really wouldn't want to play a hit this week unless the news is looking bad. Like if we get some bad news on players,
Yeah.
and that's the other reason as well for like getting those nailed players in and looking to get a really good first spot on the bench.
And Mbumo feels such a player, right? I mean, in terms of that nailed selection over the festive fixtures, thinking about your advice there, it does feel like that's consistent with that type of profile of player, right?
Oh, for sure, absolutely. No, I mean, at least for now, I can't see that changing anytime soon.
And looking through the rest of your team, right, Tim? I mean, they all. I mean, Jared Bowen, as a West Ham fan, I know he's very much our talismanic figure, playing more and more centrally and is pivotal for us. So I totally get that. He's been in great form as well.
He's great. He's great to have in. I did have him in, and then I brought him back in. Again, you can't have everyone. That's always, but it's okay. I mean, I did start the season with Eze. I think he's a knight. He was probably really quite unlucky at the beginning of the season not to get better. Speaking of talismans for their teams, I mean, honestly, I like him as a player, and I could see me, but I haven't got room to squeeze him in at the moment. I could see me quite happily bringing him back in, but right now,
he was good in Game Week 12, Tim, wasn't he, as well? I mean, he looked good. I know he was maybe a bit enthusiastic, wasn't he, and was booked, wasn't he? But he looked straight back to his best.
Hungry, looked good. I did notice that, but didn't go. I don't know where that Eze was at the start of the season. Although I think he was there, he was just a bit unlucky.
Bit unfortunate.
He just didn't get the returns. The stats. I do like my stats, and the stats were pretty good. But the returns didn't, and that doesn't always happen. That's the luck element that we all know is there for FPL, and it's just something you have to accept and move on. And he's a real bargain right now, and dropped right down. So for anyone looking for he's probably not a bad call.
Like it. That's a fun way to conclude this little section, Tim. But just before we move on and talk captaincy options for the next few game weeks, as I mentioned, just interested to get your thoughts on this Man City Liverpool game that we're coming back to. I guess Man City being at home and Liverpool being the away side. Obviously, team are going to have most FPL teams. I'm sure will have many players rocking into this fixture. No worries there. How do you see the game playing out? Maybe not from an FPL perspective, but just how do you sort of see the two teams approaching that game? And do you think there'll be goals? Do you think it'll be cagey? What's your kind of read?
I think there'll be goals. I think there'll be goals. Yeah. I mean, I could be completely wrong, of course, but like I can see goals in it because both teams I think won't want to they'll want to come back, and want to go for a win. I can't. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, but I think Haaland will be back. I think Haaland will be playing. I can see something like a 3-2 to City,
lots of
something
goals.
like that.
Yeah.
If you ask me honestly, as to place the bet, I'd say that would be something. I mean, it'll probably play out to a 1-0 now.
It's difficult. I was asking you to predict the future is kind of a hard gig, but I mean, there's so much attacking talent, isn't there? That there
really is on both
teams.
sides.
And City have conceded a few, right? They conceded a few.
I think that's the thing. That's the thing for me. That's the decider there. City have conceded in more than you might expect them to. Liverpool have got like all the attacking players in the world, all the talent that you and I just think that there's a lot of firepower on show there, and I can see it being high scoring.
Well, I hope you're right, because that'll be fun, and we're sure we get lots of points because we'll all have many different players from.
That's what
teams.
I'm hoping.
Yeah,
for,
me
yes.
too. Me too. That's a positive way to round off this section, Tim. So it's been great to get your thoughts on your team and how it's come to be and how you're intending to shape it up, and hopefully some good nuggets of information for people watching as well. But look, we've promised this look ahead to captaincy options over the next few game weeks, so let's take a look at how things are shaping up. Cool. So what we've got here, and again, apologies for the graphic being a little bit overlapped there, guys, but hopefully you can tell what we're getting at here. We've got a matrix here of game weeks 13 through 18, and some of the kind of popular picks that we and Fantasy Football Fix believe might be great captaincy choices for those particular game weeks, highlighting in green some of the more preferred options. Tim, we know from looking at your team, you've already got 3 of these boys in the team, and there's talk of Ollie Watkins potentially finding his way in as well. But give me your thoughts, man, on sort of the next several game weeks in terms of captaincy and maybe some opportunities to possibly take on the big Norwegian. What are your read on captaincy this season and over the next several game weeks ahead of the blank in 18?
Yeah, you always want a couple of captaincy options in your team, don't you? I mean, obviously Haaland, I would always prefer to captain Haaland when City are at home.
Right.
Uh, going against that. I think there are always opportunities to go against things, but I think you have to pick your moments. So Son is a valid choice. I think this is a very good graphic. I think this highlights it very well. So like Haaland this week, Haaland again, 16 and 17 look very, very nailed on.
Sure.
Next week for 14, probably Salah is the best of those, or Watkins again away at Bournemouth is a possibility, although again Villa not so. So I wouldn't be probably that's a nailed on for Salah there. It really isn't it. I think sorry, go on.
I was going to say, what are your do you subscribe to this approach to where there's something in just keeping the captaincy on an Erling Haaland or a Luis Suarez or a Cristiano Ronaldo? I'm trying to think of players who've kind of had this ubiquitous aura, I guess, to them when we were playing this game. And actually, Game Week 14 is a great example, right? You've got Mo Salah, this FPL darling, in a home game against Fulham. Fix predicts more points for him than Haaland. But
he's the nailed-on choice for that.
Yeah. So to people who are trying to sort of use this always captain whomever, do you think that's nonsense? Do you think there's something in that, or do you think
no, not at all?
Okay.
I think it's sort of it is season dependent and player dependent. Like Salah isn't really scoring quite as he once was when he was really at his peak, and that's not to say he won't start doing that again. Things change. And if you've got, Haaland at this time last year was basically, if you don't captain Haaland, it's not going to end well. We don't currently have that at the moment. So I think right now it's good where you can to have some options that you can that you can pick between. But the thing is that you can end up dodging holes.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to assess what's there as a fixture and follow both what the stats say and also what your own gut says, and hopefully if they coincide. But you look at that and it's a no-brainer for 14 for me. Most people will probably have Salah, and I think most people will probably captain in 14. I can't see it any other way. Again, 15, Son, Salah's a good option. I think as it choose between them,
it's close.
I would probably go Son. But having said that, obviously Spurs are not a bit uncertain at the moment. They've had some injuries. They're not looking.
Yeah,
there's a
question mark.
There's been a wobble. They were flying very high, and there's a question mark there now over how that sort of continues. Is Son quite the choice he was a few weeks ago
when Maddison was around? Let's tap into that a minute then, Tim. So we saw them play. If people remember back to Game Week 12, I think it was the first game week of the day. The first fixture of the game week, I should say, against Wolves. And statistically, it wasn't impressive from Son, and sort of struggled without the creativity behind him. I think there were green shoots of recovery, aren't there? Sort of some of the substitutes came on and maybe looked a little bit different. We know that Anja Postecoglou is going to be playing attacking football. So you as a Son owner,
he's not going to change.
He's not going to change, is he? So you're still really comfortable with him? Still comfortable with Son?
Yeah, you're talking about the chopping block. He's not on the chopping block, but you have in my head, I have tiers of players that because so. He was absolutely not going anywhere from my team, but perhaps with things change, it sounds a bit ruthless, but sometimes as an FPL manager, you have to be a little bit ruthless because you're playing FPL. And I think he'll probably continue to get decent enough returns for the money. But if he wasn't, the fixtures have stiffened up a little bit, I think, really there, but still decent. I still think he'll get those returns. But if he shouldn't prove to be getting those returns, then he would be coming up the order to be on the chopping block.
It makes total sense, and no room for sentiment, is there, in FPL at all? So you mentioned the fixtures.
I do love Son. I do have a soft spot for Son.
He's been, again, looking at some FPL legends on this screen, aren't we? I don't think Ollie Watkins can quite get into that territory just yet.
Not yet.
There's a chance, right?
Not yet. I think, fast forward, he's really come good this season. I think delivered on those stats and what those. There's always been that promise.
Oh, I'm a huge fan,
and he has delivered on it. He has really delivered on it this year, and I think he will probably continue to do.
So do I. I live local to Bristol City, right, and watched him when he played in the Championship in his Brentford days, and it's schools apart from Champions League position for Aston Villa under Unai Emery, but you could tell straight away there's a real player there. So I always wish him well, and he's it's great to see him. Great to see him doing.
It's good to see. It is good to see.
It is definitely. So I mean, just a nod to game week 18 then, Tim. So this is the blank that Man City we know is upcoming for them. We're seeing a lovely captaincy green for Heung-min Son. Everton had this 10-point deduction being applied. Then what that's going to mean for them morale wise, we don't know yet. So that's a captaincy option that Fix likes ahead of there, and Ollie Watkins as well. So do you think game week 18 you'll see Ollie Watkins in the team? Is that a likely scenario that we'd be revisiting?
One way or another, yeah, probably.
Okay.
And that obviously again that's team dependent for everybody. For me, I don't currently have Watkins, so and if I were to be heading towards there without him still, for based on other necessities team transfer wise, it's valid to try and consider playing the free hit then. I think it is valid. Okay. I don't even know if he'll be the most captain player that week, I think, for sure. Yeah. And it's a great fixture for them.
Yeah, I guess my always captain Haaland question is going to be tested in game week 18. You'd be a brave man to captain him when he's not playing.
I think it's identical. I think it's at this stage of the season you can pick your moments when you may deviate from. I mean, obviously that one's handed to us on plate, obviously. Yeah. But like there's always game weeks where you might be able to just sort of like think, okay, the spread of captaincies, particularly I was saying Haaland, Salah, you've got so there's options. That means that like if you can't gamble really too much against sort of like Salah at home to Fulham. That's probably not the week to go on a gamble really. It's a calculated risk, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But that's a gimme, that one. But I would probably be looking. One thing I was saying earlier, if Son wasn't to stay in my team, he could drop down to the likes of an Eze, for example, just as an example. I'm not saying that, and then that frees up plenty of funds, and then I can afford Watkins straight in, and that's an easy. That would be an easy move. Obviously, if that doesn't come to pass, then there are always other options.
I do like this talk we've had, Tim, about Eze. This has sort of been the name that's I've heard recurrent throughout the course of our chat. And just a reminder of the fixture: Luton away, West Ham away, and Bournemouth at home over the next 3. And they're a nice run. As I say, Fix likes them defensively, but he did impress, didn't he? And it's a nice, cheap enabling option. It probably could enable some different things to your team as well. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I would love to have him back in my team.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure to talk this through with you ahead of game week 13. Got to ask you, because I always ask you, if the game was, or I always ask people on the show, if the game was tomorrow, what transfer are you making?
As I said, it'll be Boomo in. It'll be Boomo in. Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
Well, look, we'll wait and see, and I'm sure people can follow that up on the manager notes, and the push notifications, as I mentioned at the start of the video, guys, are enabled over on fantasyfootballfix.com. So do head over to that site, subscribe, of course, and follow Tim and all of our other managers. Tim, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, I think we've covered pretty much it. I would just say, just wait for the news, guys. Don't rush into anything until you get some more news later on in the week. I think.
Sage advice from an excellent FPL manager. It's been awesome to have you on the show, mate, and I'm really looking forward to checking in with you in a few game weeks' time to see how your season's playing out and the ascent to the top 100k. I'm sure it's an absolute inevitability, mate. I'm sure, very confident of that. So thanks very much for coming on the show, guys. Do please smash a like on the video on your way out. Do please leave a comment down for Tim below in case you've got any questions or observations about his team or the captaincy options that we've talked through. And do please also subscribe to our channel as we push forward to 40,000 subscribers. But look, it's great to be back. We'll be back ahead of game week 14, and I wish you all the very best of luck, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye bye.